Hello, my name is John Mayares, and I am a group leader with the USDA NASS Great Lakes Regional Field Office in East Lansing, Michigan. In this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate how you can enter data into CAPI for a June area AgTract questionnaire that would have been previously completed on paper. The example I've chosen to demonstrate is one of a medium-sized dairy in the Midwest that also grows crops, both for feed and for sale. The operation will have a small number of hogs and sheep, which are being kept as 4-H projects for the operator's children. Please note that this example is being done for an operation in the Great Lakes region, which includes the states of Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. So some of the commodities you will be seeing in this questionnaire, especially in sections D, E, and F, could be different from the crops you'll be working with in your state. So I'm working under the assumption that we've already completed the AgTract questionnaire on paper, and I'm transferring the data from the paper form to the CAPI instrument. However, this instrument was set up for you to be able to collect the data directly and enter it straight into the application if you so choose. Please follow the guidance provided to you from your regional field office. I'm also assuming that those of you who are watching this presentation have worked with this instrument during pre-screening. If you haven't, there are 4 other videos available which you can review that will show you the other features of this CAPI instrument, including showing you how to access the listings which show the area segments, how to add new tracts, how to code tracts as no longer being in the segment, and other features. If you're unfamiliar with these processes, please take the time to watch those other videos before proceeding. For our example here, we're going to be working with Tract E, which I can see last year accounted for 381 acres. This year, those operators are going to be renting most of the land that was in Tract F. Although not shown here, Tract F has previously been coded as a non-ag residential tract with only 5 acres remaining. So to access Tract E, I'm going to click here where it says E5. If you, for some reason you don't see these letters A1, B2, C3, and so on, make sure that in your settings that you have the column for tract visible. There are several columns that you can turn off and on, but if the tract column isn't visible, you will not be able to screen a particular tract. So I'm going to click on E5. First question on June 1, did you live or operate land inside the red lines? We're going to say yes. Now the first thing it's going to ask us to do is to verify the address of the operator. Assuming this is all correct, we'll click on Verify Address and continue. Just like with the other records we've been screening, what were the boundaries of the land operated inside the red lines? We're going to, again, assume this has already been done. You've already marked off the tract boundaries on the photo. On the total acres operated on June 1, have there been or will there be any crops grown, hay cut, livestock, poultry, or honeybees, or aquaculture raised this year? We're going to say yes. Assuming we are now past the May cutoff to begin data collection for AgTract questionnaires, when I hit next, we're going to be seeing this introductory statement, which is printed on the front of all of the questionnaires, which includes the SIPSIA statement, the Confidential Information Protection Statistical Efficiency Act statement, the notification response is voluntary, and the OMB burden statement. Now, this particular operation is already showing that it was a partnership last year, and it says that there were 3 partners total. Let's say that we have only 2 partners this year, that partner number 3 is no longer involved in the operation. So I'm going to now change this to a 2. And my first one here, it says John Doe partner number 2. I'll just leave that there. I'll verify that this is a cell phone. Verify that the address was there. And we'll click on next. And it has removed the 3rd partner. Now it's going to ask, during the past 2 years, has the operator received mail for this operation at any address other than the one shown on the face page? For this, we're going to say no. Excluding partners and landlords, were there other names associated with this operation the past year? Let's go ahead and say yes. And I'm going to put in, let's see, Jason Doe. And we will just Upper Sandusky, Ohio. All right, so let's go to the next page. Now, it's jumping right to section D. It's not showing you section C because the calculations for whether or not the crop stocks box or the cattle box, whether or not they need to be checked, was calculated behind the scenes. Since we removed one of the partners from the partner page, that is going to mean that the crop stocks box and cattle box needed to be checked. If you did not check them on your paper form, then that is going to be a problem because you might not have asked questions during your interview with the operator that would have been skipped because you didn't check the box the way you should have. So please keep that in mind. Anytime you make a change to the operator's address, contact information, adding an operation name, or if you add a partner or remove a partner, those boxes are checked in section C, and that will help decide what questions need to be asked on the questionnaire. You'll have it on the paper form. The CAPI instrument is going to have it behind the scenes. Now we're going to fill out the information for section D. The map and photo has a boundary drawn on it. How many acres did you operate inside the red boundary? I am going to say 528.5 acres. That would include the 381 acres that tract E had last year, along with all but 5 of the acres that were in tract F last year. How many acres were in the occupied farmsteader dwelling? I'm going to say 8.5 acres. Waste, I'm going to say is 15 acres. This is a medium-sized dairy, so of course they're going to have their milking parlor, they're going to have some barns, they're going to have possibly grain, hay, storage. Let's say they have 25 acres of not pastured woodland. We have 40 acres of permanent pasture. We'll have 10 acres of idle cropland, which we will say has been signed up in the CRP program. So how many acres of winter wheat were planted for all purposes? We're going to say 60. Harvested and to be harvested for grain or seed, I'm going to say 20. And the other 40 acres were harvested as wheatlage. In order to help clarify, I'm going to add a comment here, which is going to say 40 acres of wheatlage. This will help the stats in the office understand what happened to the remaining 40 acres. Oats, we'll say there's none. I don't need to put zeros anywhere else here. I'll just put 0 for planted for all purposes. For corn, I'm going to say we have 200 acres planted for all purposes. I have nothing left to be planted. Harvested for grain, we're going to say 100 acres. And then the other 100 acres are going to be, again, for silage. For soybeans, let's say I've got 150 acres that we're going to be planting. I have 20 acres left to plant. Those are going to be the acres that we're going to be double cropped with the wheat that was harvested for grain. Let's assume we haven't gotten the grain out of the ground yet as of the 1st of June. So we will say that those are the acres left to be planted. This last part, the questionnaire wording is a little bit different. Acres planted and to be planted following another harvested crop. What is going to be double cropped? We're going to say that this is the total 60 acres because we are going to be planting the soybeans after having harvested 40 acres of wheatledge and 20 acres of wheat. If the wheat were being used as a cover crop and then was going to be destroyed, plowed under, burned down, then that would not be a double cropping situation here. Hay, let's see, we had 55 acres of alfalfa. I'm not going to have any small grain dry hay because we're assuming it's all as wheatledge. I'll have 25 acres of other hay. For other crops, I can list 0. One thing you'll notice that's a difference between the CAPI instrument and the paper questionnaire is that on the paper questionnaire, you would want to list off what those other crops were. In CAPI, you can include that information in a comment tagged to the record by clicking on the calculator and adding a comment. But you will not need to itemize what those other crops are in the CAPI instrument. Question 13, the wording is a little bit different. How many acres inside the red boundary were or will be planted to 2 different crops, including any soybeans reported in the item 602 box, or will have 2 uses of the same crop in the current year? So here I am going to list off the 60 acres that were planted to wheat and soybeans as a double cropping situation. You may have some other scenarios in your states. Another common one is hay and haylage coming out of the same field. Now we go on to section E, where we're going to get information on the total acres operated. For our intents and purposes, we're going to say that the entire operation is included as part of the segment. So I have 381 acres that are owned. We have 147.5 acres that were rented from the tract operator in tract F. We have nothing that's rented or leased to others. So that's going to give a total of 528.5 acres. Does this include all the farmstead, cropland, woodland, pastureland, and so on? We'll say yes. I hit next. It's going to give me a warning to say that the total acres operated equal the tract acres. They want to make sure that the entire farm is contained within the segment. That tract to farm ratio is used heavily in expanding some of these operations. So it is important to know if there is any land being operated outside of the segment. This is verified, so we're just going to continue. Did this operation pay on a paper head or animal unit month basis for livestock to graze on land? We'll say no. Of the total acres operated, how many were considered cropland? We're going to say 440. And that does account, if you go back and double check what we had planted for corn, for soybeans, for the alfalfa, for the other hay, and the 10 acres of CRP and idle land, that does add up to 440. We're assuming that the land that was planted to wheat is being double cropped to soybeans, so I don't need to include that here. Of the total acres operated, how many are in the CRP program or the WRP program? We'll say 10. Of the total acres operated, were there any fruit trees, grapevines, tree nuts, berries, and so on? We'll say no. Were wheat, oats, barley, or rye? Yes, we did have the winter wheat. So we'll just say yes. How many acres of new alfalfa or alfalfa mixtures have been or will be seeded? We'll say none. What was the storage capacity of all structures normally used to store whole grains or oilseed on the total acres operated? Again, this is limiting to the whole grains or oilseeds. We'll say 40,000 bushels. Please be sure that you're not including the storage that would be for the corn silage or for hay. This is strictly for whole grains or oilseeds. As far as what is currently in storage, you're focusing on crops stored from the 2021 and earlier crops. Let's say we only have 2,000 bushels left from last year's crop, but we don't have any soybeans or wheat or oats, so I'm going to check the none box here. Were any of the stocks on hand from the 2022 harvest? Well, it's a little early for the 2022 harvest, so we'll say no. Did this operation raise or own any hogs, pigs, regardless of location? We're going to say that they do have a couple of 4-H pigs here. So I will say how many pigs on the total acres operated is 2. Are any of them owned by someone else? No. How many did they own? 2. But I do want to make a note here that I know that these hogs are 4-H hogs only. So that could be very helpful when we go to do the December hog survey to know how many hogs this operation had. Say 2 hogs for 4-H projects only will be gone for December 1. Close that. Are any of them located on someone else's land? No. Have you raised your pigs under any other business name? No. Now we'll go on to the cattle section. Were any cattle or calves, regardless of ownership, on the total acres operated? We'll say yes. We said this is a medium-sized dairy. They do not have any beef cows. We'll say they have 180 milk cows. 5 bulls. We don't have any heifers for beef cow replacement. But let's say we have 25 heifers weighing more than 500 pounds that are for milk cow replacement. I don't have any other heifers right now. We'll have 0 steers. And then for calves, let's say I have 50 calves. And that's going to give us a total of 260 head. Do I have any cattle on feed? For this operation, we're going to say no. It's primarily a dairy operation. Of the cows and heifers on the total acres operated, how many are expected to calve in the next 6 months? Well, we're going to say 95 out of those 180. Plus, of course, we know that there's those 25 heifers that haven't calved yet. So those would be included in this 95. Of the calves born on the operation between January 1 and May 31, how many were on hand on June 1? I'll say 50. Again, those would be the 50 calves that we reported back on the previous screens. Let's say we moved off 38, maybe the male calves, and that 2 died before June 1. That's going to give us a total calf crop for the first half of the year of 90 head. Were any sheep, lambs, regardless of ownership on the total acres operated? We did say that this was going to be a yes, but again that they were 4-H sheep. Now, I can't just pull up the calculator from here very easily when I have questions with radio buttons. So I'm going to add a general comment up here to make a note saying that there were 3 sheep for 4-H projects will be gone by the end of the year. Of course, if you know that information, again, that will be good to know. so that when we are getting closer to the January sheep and goat report, we have a good idea as to how many sheep were on the operation before the end of the year. Click next. Were there any goats or kids on the total acres operated? We're going to say no. And of course, it will want to do additional screening. Were there any in the first half of the year? And will there be any in the second half of the year? Say no. On June 1, were there any horses, ponies, mules, donkeys, or burros regardless of ownership? Let's say yes. Let's say that there were 4 horses and that they were all owned. Will this operation have anyone on the payroll to do agricultural work? We're going to say yes. A commercial dairy typically is going to have a number of people that are going to help with the milking on a daily basis. Let's say the largest number on the payroll for the year is going to be 8. Now we're wanting to find out the market value of all land and buildings on the total acres operated. This would include anything inside or outside the segment. Of course, for this particular example, all of the land operated is inside the segment. This is one of the few places where if you really don't know or the operator doesn't know, I could go to the calculator and I could click on don't know and it will it'll key it up here as a -1 when you select the DK in the calculator. Or again, hopefully you want to make sure when you talk to the operator, they're accounting for all the cropland, the pasture land, any of the buildings. You've got the farmstead there, you've got maybe a milking parlor, you've got grain storage bins, you've got barns for the cattle. For an operation this size, let's say it's $3.5 million, and that the value has increased in the last year by 10%. For question 2, they're asking about the average value per acre for cropland or pasture land. Again, if the operator doesn't know, we could go to our calculator and select DK here. However, if they do know, that's always going to be best. Please do not guess for the operator. Let's say, though, for this one that the value of the cropland is $6,500 an acre, and the pasture land is $2,000 per acre. Again, as a reminder, they're focusing for this question on acres inside the tract. So if we had a larger operation with land outside the segment, we do not want to include that. We want to focus on the cropland and pasture land recorded inside the tract boundaries on the aerial photo. We want to report what range represents the total gross value of sales, including agricultural payments from the government. For a dairy this size, let's say it's between $500,000 and $1 million. Now, one thing that is going to be different in a census year is that we need to record all of the information about what is being produced on the operation for the current year. We know that they planted 200 acres of corn. There's no cotton. We have 150 acres of soybeans, 60 acres of wheat. We don't have any sweet potatoes, vegetables, melons, hay. Let's see, we had 55 acres of alfalfa, 25 acres of other hay. That's going to be 80 acres total. If I want to look at some of these other categories, I just click on the plus sign. That's going to open up the next group. I don't have any nursery or greenhouse production here. No nursery out in the open. We do not have any fruit crops, bearing or non-bearing here. Under livestock, we did have some cattle. It is not going to carry forward the cattle information from section H. So we are going to have to put in here that we had 180 milk cows. We had 80 other cattle, which included the bulls and the calves and the heifers. And we had 3 sheep and we had no goats. I'll just leave that blank. What type of farm is this? This is going to be a commercial dairy. Section P, changed from previous years. We need to know how many men, how many women were involved in this operation. We will say there was one man, one woman, and then it's going to collect information about the 4 primary operators here. So I'm going to say first one is John Doe, who is male. We will say John is 51 years old. We will say that he is Hispanic, white, and began operating in 2007, but began to operate first farming operation in 2003. Person 2, we're going to say is Jane Doe. She's female, 48 years old. She is not Hispanic. Say she's white. She first began to operate on this farm in 2007. And that was her first farm that she worked with. But that is 2007. It is going to ask for person 3 and person 4, regardless of the fact that we already said there were only 2 operators, but we can either click on next, or you can click on the specific tab to go from one person to the next. But we do need to go through all 4 people before we can progress to the next section. Now, do we want to receive a copy of the results? Let's enter an email address. We'll say this is john@doefarms.net. Operation email, we can say doefarms@doefarms.net. Operation phone, say I've got 419-000-0000, and it's not a cell phone. I'm going to code this as a complete report. We'll say that the operator completed the report with us. We don't need to enter the name if it was the operator. If we spoke to the spouse, Jane Doe, then we would enter her name here. Say this was completed telephone on paper, and we have our enumerator number listed here. And once we get to here, I have the choice. I can either submit the tract or screen another tract. Since we're done, we're going to submit the tract. It gives us a warning to make sure that we understand that once we submit this, we're not going to be able to edit it. If you do need to make changes after you submit it, you're going to need to reach out to the regional field office so that they can unlock the form for you. I'm just going to hit OK. And now we have completed the AgTrac questionnaire here for Tract E. Notice on the right, it's going to say complete pending. And up here, we have our number of items that are still being pushed through. It comes through, and now we have the date and time when the form was completed. And that is how we are going to complete an AgTrac questionnaire. Thanks for taking the time to review this presentation. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact your supervisor, your NASDA coordinator, or the survey stat in the regional field office, and they will be more than happy to help you out here. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you all again very soon.